Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to start by acknowledging that the land we meet on today is the traditional lands of the Kaurna people, and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present and future. I was moved by the opportunity to share the American and Australian national anthems. Overnight, I was messaging an Australian engineer friend who's embedded with an American unit in Kandahar in Afghanistan. It reminded me again that whether it's in peace or in war, Australia and America are implacable friends. I'd also like to thank you as an organisation for your ongoing relationship with the Hospital Research Foundation, for a business organisation to support the health and wellbeing of South Australians, and for that matter, people right around the world through the work of the Hospital Research Foundation is greatly appreciated. As Minister for Health and Wellbeing, my primary focus is on the provision of quality health services to South Australians. The health budget is around 1/3 of the total state budget, and about 1/3 of our budget is spent purchasing from the private sector. Health is a labour-intensive industry. SA Health is the largest employer in the state with 40,000 employees. Particularly in rural communities, health is both the main employer and a fundamental service to attract and retain residents. Research is increasingly a vital and integrated part of health service delivery. Through research, clinicians continuously improve their services. Research acts as a guarantor of quality. Research provides early access to new drugs and treatments. Research helps us to attract, retain and develop a high-quality workforce. What is often overlooked is that cutting-edge research also brings very significant grant money into the state, supporting better services and providing an economic stimulus at the same time. Health is an important opportunity for economic growth in this state. The Marshall Liberal government has a focus on job creation. Realising the opportunities is a priority for the government. The Premier has identified health and medical industries as one of the priority growth sectors in the government's growth state initiative. The government has been actively engaging the industry to identify areas of potential growth and how government can assist in unlocking and accelerating business expansion and job creation. Stimulating investment in South Australia's bioscience, biotech and health industries will lead to an increase in local jobs, boost the economy and create opportunities for SA to innovate and develop local expertise in areas such as medical devices and pharmaceuticals. Already, it's estimated that the sector generates nearly $900 million in overseas and interstate exports. Its direct contribution to gross state product is around $2.3 billion, and the sector employs nearly 24,000 South Australians. There are many outstanding people and groups already doing extraordinary work across the state to develop our health and medical industries, including a significant amount of investment in our health and medical research capabilities. The partnership of the Royal Adelaide Hospital, SAMRI, the University of Adelaide, the University of South Australia and Flinders University has created a dynamic hub for health and medical research with the creation of Adelaide Biomed City. The Adelaide Biomed City mission is to be a globally recognised partnership leading in research, education, clinical care and population health. Its establishment as a hub for research, teaching and patient care shines a spotlight on the efforts occurring within the state, nationally and internationally, and positions South Australia well to attract expertise and investment to build and grow its capabilities into the future. The Marshall government continues to support the precinct's achievements. We've committed $44 million to the new SAMRI 2 Institute. SAMRI 2 is co-located with SAMRI and the new RA and will house a proton therapy unit for precise treatment of traditionally hard-to-treat cancers. The SAMRI 2 project is expected to create 250 jobs in construction and 340 ongoing jobs, including researchers who will be located in the new facility. Flinders University development of the Flinders Health and Medical Research Institute is another example of the commitment within the state to health and medical research. The institute has a focus on clinical translation, healthy communities, and molecular biosciences. The Flinders Institute will boost SA's research capability in the south, further strengthening the existing capabilities of the university, the Flinders Medical Centre within a new Flinders precinct. The government believes that we need to improve our performance in research. In particular, we need to make sure that our local health networks are welcoming of research and that approval processes are timely and efficient. A review of research governance across the South Australian public health system has been conducted by Mr. Jim Birch. The implementation of the report is being facilitated by Health Translation SA through a strategic leadership group called the SA Clinical Research Governance Steering Committee, which has been chaired by the SA Chief Scientist, Professor Carolyn McMillan, who I understand is with us today. The review's first recommendation of procuring a research management system for the Department of Health and Wellbeing is already underway. The project is being led by the Department's Office for Research, and I'd like to recognise the generous support provided by the Hospital Research Foundation in relation to this project. The new research management system will expedite the research application process by improving timeliness, the visibility of application status, monitoring and reporting. The system will deliver an enhanced end-user experience and align application processes across local health networks for investigator-led trials, commercial sponsors, administrators, and others involved in health and medical research. Additionally, the Department's Office for Research is launching a web portal to promote clinical trials in the state by providing a central point of contact as a landing page for parties interested in learning more about clinical trials in South Australia. It will also be a source of key clinical trials information and activity within the state. And if you'd like to include your organisation's site link on the portal, I'd encourage you to contact the Office for Research. As well as the Birch review work, the Premier has also tasked the South Australian Productivity Commission to inquire into health and medical research and development in the state. The Commission will provide recommendations on options to improve the state's share of Australian government funding, increase the scale and productivity and impact of health and medical R&D in South Australia. It will look at changes to the structure, governance and operation of publicly funded health and medical R&D. The Commission will consult with SA agencies, universities, research institutes, industry, relevant peak bodies and other key stakeholders. The Commission will shortly release an issues paper that sets out the Commission's initial understanding of the matters to be addressed, and this paper will seek feedback from interested parties on the matters identified. A draft report will be available in July and a final report in October 2020. Professor Edwina Cornish has been appointed to the Commission in the context of this inquiry. A former Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Research at both Adelaide and Monash universities, Professor Cornish also spent 10 years leading research in a then newly established plant biotechnology company. The Department of Health and Wellbeing will build on the work of the Productivity Commission to develop a statewide health and medical research strategy that will enhance collaboration and competitiveness of South Australian research at a national level while contributing to economic growth. There are many examples of the great passion and support for health and medical research in the state across the public, private and philanthropic sectors. It's an exciting time to be involved in health and medical research. I'm convinced that to achieve our potential in this area, South Australia will need to be even more collaborative. I thank you for the tremendous work that many of you are already doing to contribute to the growth of health and medical research in this state, and I wish you all the best in your endeavours. The physical, mental and economic wellbeing of South Australians and the state relies on your success. Thank you.
The prospects of the impact from medical research are really tremendously astounding, and it's only when you hear the stories of people impacted by medical research that you can actually really start to understand the power of supporting medical research right from the start. The pathway for that to actually go from a university or a hospital from a research perspective to then actually having products and services that can be in market and deliver that economic benefit, but also the social benefit, is a long and hard-trodden path. And we'll touch a little bit on that today as we sort of go through some questions. Now, the Hospital Research Foundation is a a very, very powerful charitable organisation here in South Australia. You see the advertising around Together Fight, and it really underpins the creed that we have to support this translational pathway. The Hospital Research Foundation funds over 50 different areas of medical research across cardiology, oncology, post-traumatic stress and those sorts of areas. And you can't, for a second, ever discount the importance of the activities of a charitable organisation like the Foundation here in the community of South Australia. Last year alone, we put $26 million into funding patient care and medical research programs here in South Australia. And some of those things might not start to yield benefits for many years into the future, but certainly some of those patient care activities really are starting to bear fruit already, and we saw some of those last night at the Impact Showcase. It was really a fantastic night. We also put in $5.7 million into supporting 16 early career and mid-career research fellowships. That's really important because that's the workhorse, that's the engine that will drive future research here in South Australia to benefit us locally, but also the nation. And when you look at medical funding generally across the country, it's really difficult to get money to support the launch of those careers, and so putting that money to work is super important. The success of our home lotteries is tremendously important to us as well. We're advertising at the moment that the current lottery is over 50% sold out, so I suggest if you haven't already gone and bought your ticket in the most recent lottery, then make that a target for this afternoon. And we're super excited with the quality of the products that we're able to put forward in that lottery. On today's topic more broadly, medical research and the impact that it can have is long-standing. I think if we look at the convergence of where traditional medical research is coming now with data and data management, we're starting to see opportunities open up in personalised medicine. Ultimately, as the Minister said, over a third of the budget goes into healthcare. And so what does that mean for how we can start to look at preventative medicine, getting people out of hospitals faster, but also making sure they don't go back? And so this comes back to a lot of more personalised areas where even treatments like oncology can be tailored to the particular person's cancer based on genomics. And we'll start to talk a little bit about that with the panel. Genomics and big data, it's a double-edged sword. The power that you can have with tailoring treatments is absolute. But then there's the other side, privacy, and how the way that data is managed in and of itself. One of the areas I really like the concept of is preventative medicine. So how can we use genomics and data to actually map our lives going forward, thinking about what it is that we might be at risk of? We know if we've got colon cancer in our family history, we need to go and get tested for colon cancer, likewise for breast cancer and so on. But what about other ailments? What can we use science for, research and data, to help ensure our own quality of life and longevity? And with that, I'm going to open it up to the panel, starting with you, Yvette, to talk a little bit about Biomed City and your role and the challenge that we've got in front of us to maximise the benefit.
Thank you for the introduction. So I'm the General Manager of Adelaide Biomed City, the biomedical precinct on North Terrace. There's been a $3.6 billion infrastructure investment in that precinct, and it currently houses around 2,000 biomedical researchers, 10,000 staff, 18,000 daily visitors, and we're growing with the recently announced 80 million new Cancer Institute, the SEMRI 2 that has been highlighted several times today already, and also the reallocation for the new Women's and Children's Hospital. And I would like to focus a little bit on our strength. I think it's good to highlight that we're an emerging precinct. We just signed a collaboration agreement a little bit over a year ago. So if you look at maturity pathways of precincts, they look at proposed, emerging, active, or globally significant precincts. We're in an emerging state, and I think we have really valuable assets currently, which we need to start harnessing. And to highlight, one of them is proximity, and I start with it because it's often underestimated. If you look at in the US and Canada, they did some research around the biotech sector, and within all the biotech industry within US and Canada, and within that sector, the the institutes that were clustered together were 8 times more innovative than when they were not clustered. And it highlights the importance, also if we look at our Royal Adelaide Hospital next to our research institutes, it's the clinicians and the researchers who can walk within a minute to each other, integrate in their systems. It's talking about getting access to the data in the hospitals. It's quite a complex system, and being close to each other really help us drive collaboration. And I think if you look at proximity, that will drive collaboration, that will lead to innovation, and don't underestimate proximity. And that's not only within Adelaide Biomed City, where we have 2,000 biomedical researchers and a lot of clinicians. It's also connecting with the other precincts here in the States. 2 miles from us is Lot 14. We have a lot of other precincts just around the corner from us, and that's very important. Another strength I would like to highlight is around the quality of research and the quality of infrastructure. 2 very important points. If you look at the quality of research, researchers look at the citation index, and everything above 1 is above world average. And South Australia is scoring within the health and medical sector above 1, 1.5. We're doing really good. We can be proud of ourselves as researchers. We're good. And if you look at the rankings, we're under Victoria, but we're above all the other states at this moment. I don't think we're doing really good at getting the big grants to us currently. There's a lot of work to be done in that area, but we're high performing in research, and we need to make sure we keep it. And maybe even broader look at the quality of research. I highlighted health and medical, but the STEM research areas is also very important because it's all about integration of those sectors in the medical sector. And South Australia is ranked between 1.5 and 2.5 above average. So we're really good here, and we should be really proud of that and leverage that. If we look at infrastructure, we have a 2.6 billion investment in our research infrastructure in medical, and there are other investments across the state. We have a high-quality, state-of-the-art microscopy suite, genomic suite, high-state clinical trials facilities. We have a cyclotron based in the cellar assembly. Only 2 weeks ago, I had a Pfizer team over, and they were highly impressed about the work that was happening within the universities, but also the work what was happening around the cyclotron, the research and the industry partnerships. So we hope to get the US delegation back in a couple of months. This was the Australian delegation, but they're impressed about what we're doing. And infrastructure is very important because infrastructure, state-of-the-art infrastructure, help us get new researchers, talented researchers here, which help us increase the quality of our research again. So high quality research, infrastructure, I think we're in a really good place. And there's, where there's a lot to accelerate on, but we're in a good place and we should be proud of that. And the third one I like to highlight is around emerging technologies. I think it's mentioned several times already here. But to realize we have number 3 in the world of the Australian Institute of Machine Learning, just 2 miles from our precinct. AI is a 13 billion industry worldwide. Only the health part of AI. I'm not talking about the full industry. It's enormous. We're ranked number 3 in the world in computer vision papers, which is highly applicable to a lot of areas within healthcare, MRIs. That's I think, a real strength we should leverage. Another one is augmented reality. I just found out literally 2 weeks ago, but we have here number 1 and number 4 in the world in most published papers in AR and VR here in South Australia. And we need to start realizing what we have on assets in our emerging technologies and make sure we converge them into a ethical sector.
Thanks very much, Yvette. It's a great introduction. Now, we've got the research, we've got the infrastructure. To you, Terry, now on the data. So in your thickest Australian accent, can you talk to us a bit about your background and IBM Watson?
Sure. So I'm originally from the northeast of England, so I've got a very strong regional accent. Everyone thinks I'm Irish, and especially with a name like Sweeney, and sometimes I use that to get free Guinness on St. Patrick's Day, but I'm not Irish. I lived in Adelaide from 2007 until 2011. I had my own software company, and we we landed a very large contract here in SA, and that's what brought me to Adelaide. And then I've since been living in Brisbane, Sydney, and I moved back to Adelaide about 3 months ago. I spent about 50% of my time in Boston and 50% of my time here in Adelaide. So I'm the managing director for IBM Watson Health. So IBM, as you all know, a big tech company. We're 110 years old. We have 350,000 employees, about 6,500 of which are in Australia, and we have about 50 or 60 here in Adelaide, and we're expanding, which I think is very important. Our focus in healthcare, a lot of people probably don't realize, because we are a big tech company, but we have a big history in health at IBM. So everyone knows laser eye surgery. Well, that's an IBM invention. We invented the Da Vinci machine for heart and lung procedures. And then probably around about 2005, we started to take a very serious look at artificial intelligence and machine learning. And it's not new, right? I mean, AI's been around since the 60s, actually, right, but we just haven't had the compute power or the availability of data to do stuff with the tech, and now we do. So we look. We've got about 6,000 in IBM Watson Health globally, and we're looking initially at treatment support. Now a little bit more on diagnosis, and then to your point, Stephen, very much looking at prevention now, and how do we use that new technology to unlock insights from all of the data that's available to drive better patient outcomes, operational efficiency, whatever we're trying to do in the health system. I think, data is definitely key. It's all about the patient, but in tech, we say it's all about the data. And, we're going to see a doubling of healthcare data every 73 days by next year. And as individuals, we are going to generate about 1,100 terabytes of healthcare-related information in our lifetime. And it's not the traditional text-based information, with smart technology, with wearables and Internet of Things. We're getting more and more data on our health and well-being. And so for us, we're looking at how can we use AI and similar technologies to get something out of all of that information. I think in Australia, I'm very passionate about Australia. I'm a proud Australian now, despite the accent. I don't think we do enough, and I don't think we're as innovative as everyone thinks we are, especially in healthcare. I think we're very conservative, and I think, I do a lot of work in Asia, in China, in Japan in particular, and I think in that, in that region of the world, I think that, citizens and governments and private organizations are more willing to take on a little more risk. You don't necessarily get the conversation around data privacy, security, and sovereignty as we have here with My Health Record. I'm a fan of My Health Record. I think the concept is good. I think if I'm diagnosed with a chronic disease and I'm sitting in front of my doctor, I want that doctor to have all of the information available to give me the best treatment program possible. No one can argue with that. No. I mean, the way it was rolled out, the PR exercise is probably not the best. But I think fundamentally having that information available in a secure manner to do the right thing for us when we fall sick, I think is supremely important, and a big building block. You can have all the technology in the world, but it's useless without the data.
Yeah. And the next step across that, so if we can harness the data, we've got the infrastructure and the research, it's then that pathway to translation or commercialization, and it's sort of try and bring you into that conversation there, Karen, we can think about new therapeutics and diagnostics and things like that, but your area really a fair bit more focused on medical devices. And so just open that up for you to tell us a bit about.
All right, thanks, Steve. So I'm a biomedical engineer. I've been in the country longer than Terry, although my accent isn't quite so entertaining. So what brought me actually out here, so I work at Flinders University. I'm a biomedical engineer, as I said, and the thing that really encouraged me about coming was the fact that Flinders University was sharing a campus with the medical centre. So it was the opportunity for us as researchers to be engaging very closely into the clinical community. And that's a really key part of any puzzle in the innovation piece in this space. But so over the sort of next 20 years, I guess, just that's increased my passion for really trying to connect the right parts of the ecosystem together. So if you are trying to develop new medical devices, new medical technologies, to be able to access all the various stakeholders in that innovation piece is really important. And it's not easy if you're an innovator, just perhaps a single inventor or a very small company. And so what's been driving me, or what's my passion, is to make sure that we can connect all the right pieces of the puzzle. And we do have all the right pieces of the puzzle here in South Australia. So Yvette's already talked about some of our really fabulous research expertise and how we're actually doing really well on a national stage and on a global stage as well. She's told you a little bit about the absolutely wonderful infrastructure that's being built here on North Terrace. And I would say that, I travel around the country and the rest of the country is really watching South Australia. They're saying, finally, South Australia seems to be getting it right. I'd like to add to the discussion about the infrastructure on North Terrace and talk about the Tonsley precinct particularly. So for anyone who hasn't been to the Tonsley precinct, I would recommend you either get on the train or just pop in your car. Don't end up in the wrong lane and go to Noarlunga like a lot of people are doing at the moment. If you've done it, you'll know what I mean. But the Tonsley precinct, or the Tonsley Innovation District as it's known, which is it's being populated by, certainly, firstly, Flinders University has a significant presence there. Our Medical Device Research Institute is there. The Medical Device Partnering Programme is headquartered there. We've got the Global Centre for Modern Ageing there. We have a number. Well done. We have a number of small companies there, so some incubator space, and so a number of different companies. We've got some bigger companies. We've got a company such as MicroX, who some of you will have heard of, who are doing fabulous stuff, still really in the startup phase, but absolutely doing really well, getting investment in and expanding their premises and their reach. So it's a really vibrant opportunity for engaging research, industry, and then with the clinical community just down the road, either going into town or towards the Flinders Medical Centre, where now we're building this absolutely just so exciting health precinct. So I think there are just huge opportunities here in South Australia, brilliant infrastructure being built, and we just really need to make sure that those are connected and that we collaborate together.
Yep. And I think it's a tremendously important point, the connection. As much as the tyranny of distance that we might have from other parts of the world, we do have the ecosystem and a lot of those pieces of the puzzle right here in Adelaide and South Australia. You can build buildings and they last for a long time, but it's what happens in them which is actually what matters. And so part of that is the networking and the ecosystem and collaboration and so on. But Yvette, if I can come back to you and sort of talk about the Biomed City precinct, what does success look like? What will make that precinct different to Parkville, Victoria, or Cambridge, Massachusetts?
Yeah, it's what success looks like is probably the easy question. It's harder, how do you get there? But if I look what success looks for, I just highlight the maturity pathways of innovation districts, because we're an innovation neighborhoods. And we're just opened the door a year ago in that sense, or the doors are open 2017, 2018, most of them. We're an emerging precinct, and we want to move forward to an active and a globally significant precinct. So if you look around the world, because let's look at some literature, we're not the first one in the world doing this. And the New South Wales Productivity Commission produced a really good report about lessons learned about international precincts around the world. And if you look at their what a significant global precinct look like, because that's what our mission is, it's like having a significant economic impact. It's around having a lot of jobs, a lot of different type of firms present in your precincts, covering the full value chain. It's around a lot of commercialization, translation, and innovation happening. It's a strong culture of risk-taking. I think you highlight as well. It's a robust governance. So all these things is what we're striving for, what we want to achieve, what success looks like. And that's, the big step up. And if you look on the shorter term, I mean, for example, there's one of the precincts that's been mentioned is Oslo Cancer Cluster. That only opened the door in 2015. That's not too long ago. And now it's on the stage, the global stage mentioned. And why was it successful? Because it focused on a specialized area. It looked at what is our competitive advantage. They build on what they were strong at already. And now everybody's referring to that precinct, and they're highly impactful in commercialization, innovation, in economic growth.
Yeah, I agree. The pathway to get there is the tricky one.
Yeah.
Parkville's got CSL. Cambridge has a very, very long list of companies, but Nevada's Takeda and so on. What's the honeypot? What's the attractor, do you think, or our reason for being famous across that precinct to attract a large company?
Yeah, I think it's around connecting the dots again.
Yeah.
And I cannot highlight that as much, but it is around connecting the dots. It's everything that I talked about, the strength of our precinct, but we're in a fuller ecosystem. We're in the middle next to Tabberton, the bioscience precincts, the Lot 14. We have Tech Park, we have Tansley focusing on the manufacturing part. And I think that's what, if I had a lot of the international delegations coming over from the US, Europe, Asia, and that's what impressed them. It's our full ecosystem.
Yeah. Karen, the connections with industry are important. The wider ecosystem to support translation and commercialization, access to capital, all those sorts of things. We've got the Medical Research Commercialization Fund that we can access. We've got the Adelaide China Biotech Fund, the SAVCF, of course, supported by the state government. Can you talk a bit about starting companies, access to capital, and actually getting them going?
Sure. So, and particularly in the technology space, because that's I guess my expertise. Most medical device ideas come from individuals, and very often from the clinicians who are there and they can see the problem. As a clinician, it's actually very hard to know what to do with a good idea. And I guess that's one of the reasons that we put the Medical Device Partnering Program together, was to really try and assist people, innovators, small companies or clinicians with good ideas for new medical technologies to actually come to a single point and be able to connect to the people that they need in that ecosystem. So what we would do is bring in people that might be a clinician, it might be a manufacturer, it might be a inventor, it might be a researcher, it might be an IP attorney, and try and bring those people around a single idea, because without knowing how to make those connections, it becomes really, really difficult to try and, I think, kickstart your idea. So I'm talking at the really early stage of development here. A lot of the funds that you've talked about, and certainly some of the federal funding schemes as well, so ARC linkage, for example, or the biomedical translation bridge, relies on you already having partnerships and already knowing who you want to work with and who you need to work with. And again, that's really difficult, because you can't just go and knock on a door of probably a busy clinician and say, hey, have I got the idea, an idea for you? So that was, again, that was really the motivation behind the Medical Device Partnering Program, is to try and help facilitate those connections, but then not only to facilitate the connections, but also to then actually do a little bit of tangible project work to provide some data or a prototype or some clinical input that can then be put into the hands of a potential investor, or sort of be written into a grant application, or so on and so forth. So I think it's that really early stage between having the idea and actually being able to go with your partner to the funder, whatever that funder might be, is the biggest problem.
So are there other barriers that sit around that from an institutional perspective?
At that very early stage, yeah.
How long's the list?
People have always been a little bit suspicious of universities. Firstly, they're big places, they're big scary places. You know, Flinders was always the place up on the hill. And you don't know, as a sort of a sole inventor or a very small company, you don't know where to go, who to talk to. There's always been a perception that universities are slow to respond, that they're likely to steal your IP, which I would just put out there is not true at all. But there has always been a perception that universities are difficult to deal with, and Again, I think that is changing. We're certainly becoming more nimble, but it was one of the reasons that I put the partnering program together, was to try and, fast track those negotiations and fast track those relationship building so that we could actually get into the meat of doing the work.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's an overarching shift in universities' approach to managing intellectual property, wanting to deal with companies, industry engagement, and so on. And a lot of that, I think, probably comes from the pressure being put on universities to show the tangible outcomes of research, not just to the federal government, but also telling stories of the relevance of research to the communities that they work with and support. But it needs to be better and faster and easier to navigate, I agree. Terry, data management, artificial intelligence, machine learning, it moves so quickly.
Yeah.
Whatever we talked about at the start of this address, something else will have already come along by now.
Yeah.
How do you stay ahead of it? And what are the mega trends that we sort of need to be looking out for in such a rapidly moving area?
Sure, yeah, it's an interesting one. I think, we've been talking about research a little bit, and I certainly think research is very much at the heart of what we do with our technology. We invest $6 billion US a year in research and development, and a lot of that is in artificial intelligence, machine learning, healthcare, medical research. We have 12 research centers around the world, one of which is in Australia, 3,000 staff, 6 Nobel Prize winning scientists working for us. So research is very much at the heart of what we do. But as a commercial organization, as an organization that has to return a profit to its shareholders, we're very acutely aware of the speed to market from a good idea to, have I got the software for you to sell you for, $10 million. So I think I think the first thing I would say, going off topic a little bit, is on the commercial side of what you were saying before, the partnership between the private sector, government, the world of academia and medical research is extremely important, and it's the only way we're gonna speed things up and advance some of these new technologies into something real that's going to make a difference for a patient. I think we're doing some of the mega trends. So precision medicine is definitely one. So as an example, the interpretation of of the sequencing data from a DNA test for a cancer patient, for example, that's something that's being done right now by humans, and it takes about a week. We've now got IBM Watson doing that in about 10 minutes. So identifying a targeted therapy for a cancer patient based on a DNA test. So precision medicine is definitely something that's an emerging and a developing trend. I do a lot of work with the American Cancer Society in Atlanta. They just released some figures from the last few years, and I think for the first time in recorded history, the mortality rate for cancer patients saw a sharp decline in 2016-17. They've just published the results, and a lot of that is attributed to personalized or precision medicine, as we call it. So I think that's a mega trend. But I think at the other end, there's a lot of, we've got all this shiny new technology, and everyone's talking about AI, and blockchain is another buzzword in technology, and it's all good stuff. But I keep thinking about me as a patient. I had to go and see my GP last week, and I booked my appointment, and it was for 11 o'clock on a Thursday morning. And I knew that I was still going to be sitting there 45 minutes later, and I had no way to real-time check if the doctor's running late, and I could go and do something better with my time. I think we live in an age of consumerism. I don't think we've got that yet with healthcare.
No.
Consumer is not king in healthcare. I think for whatever reason, and it's in our psyche, that as patients, we interact with the healthcare system, and we're willing to accept terrible service. The clinicians are great. They're very, very good. And if you look at clinical outcomes, and particularly in Australia, some of the best in the world.
Yeah.
But I'm a customer when I use the healthcare system, and my customer experience when I interact with the healthcare system is not good.
No.
It's not in the same way as when I log online and order a new T-shirt from Amazon. I get a much more pleasant experience and a better level of customer service. So I think, again, when it comes to technology, that's an enabler for putting the consumer, the patient at the center, and actually driving those day-to-day things, the interactions with the health system that would make life so much better for a patient. And I think that's another mega trend. And I guess going alongside that, I do a lot of work in the US, as I mentioned. We're seeing companies like CVS, Walmart. I was just in Dallas, Georgia, looking at the very first primary care clinic in a Walmart store. Wow. You can see a GP for $49.95, which is cheaper than a co-payment if you have very good healthcare insurance in the US. I could see a dentist, an optometrist, an audiologist. All of those services are available in a Walmart store. And they're going to roll that out to 1 and 2 Walmarts. 3,500 Walmarts in the US will have a primary care clinic. Best Buy have this concept of the Geek Squad. So if you go and buy a TV and a stereo system and a smart speaker, they will come out and install that in your home. They're repurposing that Geek Squad to go to an elderly person's home and install IoT monitors. And almost like, it's a crude way of putting it, but almost like a security company monitors an alarm system, and when the alarm goes off, they'll call the police. In the same way, they'll be monitoring that elderly person in their home and alerting a carer or a family member if there's a break from the routine. Quite analogous to what the Global Center for Modern Aging are doing at Tonsley. So retail health and consumer health is something that's a mega trend right now. The convenience of going into a store, getting your groceries and seeing the doctor while you're there is interesting. And I think that is what will drive a better level of customer service in the healthcare system.
Yep. So a lot of that hinges off of data platforms, data management, and from a customer perspective, dealing with Amazon, we're kind of comfortable with that.
Yeah.
But what about when it comes down to healthcare and the prospect of having our genome sequenced or looking into the crystal ball of likelihood that we're going to suffer this particular disease at this age?
Yeah.
How do we educate people? How do we policy for that?
Well, I think on the data thing, that is interesting, and that's where technology has advanced so much, and policy is coming up behind it, and what do we do? And it's back to the data and who owns it and what can we do with it. But I think ultimately, unless you're living in China, and I do a lot of work with China where the government owns all the healthcare information, it makes life somewhat easier, actually. I think, I use my banking app on a daily basis. I've given permission for my bank to, within the banking organization, to use my information to let me know about products and services that I might be interested in. Because I find that quite interesting, and they might pop me an email, tell me about something that I didn't already know. Could my bank account get hacked? Absolutely. Do I worry about it when I do online banking? Absolutely not. So I think we've got to use that. We've got to show the benefits of sharing data for the greater good in healthcare, rather than the stick. It's tick this box to share your information, and it's all anonymized, it's all de-identified, but tick that box and you'll get a much better level of service. Yeah. And I think we just need to highlight the positives of sharing that information.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting concept because it's always the consequence. What is the consequence of? And so, 10 years ago or 20 years ago, we would never have thought about being so reliant on our smartphones for buying and selling shares or transferring money or whatever it was. But now you do it without even thinking about it, and you've got facial recognition and tap and go and all those awesome things that we take for granted. There's been an experience there that's happened over the course of time, and I don't doubt that will transition over generations as these sorts of things come in.
I think so.
But in an aging population, there's a massive education piece there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's where government can help.
Do we ever ask as patients, what happens if we're not starting to share our data? The effects, the negative effects of it. Yep. And we hardly have those conversations, but they're enormous of not sharing it. Yep. And yes, we have to have that full conversation, but also the negatives of not doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And Karen, insofar as, medical devices, and again, I sort of started saying with therapeutics and diagnostics, in my mind, that sort of has a more natural affinity with data management and predictive medicine and things like that. From a medical device perspective, where does artificial intelligence and data management come in?
Well, so, I mean, medical devices are less and less kind of just standalone widgets, really. Almost any new medical device that you look at is connected in some way. So firstly...
Do you mean I'll have like an app for my hip replacement, or...?
Yeah, absolutely. The future's coming.
It'll be Bluetooth connected.
But, and I guess, I mean, Terry actually talked about the hype of AI, and I do worry a little bit about that, because I think AI has absolutely huge potential in technology, medical technology, but almost every product that I see coming across, or potential idea that comes across my desk, almost any grant application I see that comes again across my desk is talking about using AI, using machine learning in whatever data that's being produced. And while I think it is a huge opportunity, I think at the moment there's a mismatch between people's perception of what it is and what it can do, and the reality of the people who are doing the research and the development. And certainly there's a real naivety amongst certain elements of I would suggest, of the industry, who just think it's the magic button, and they'll collect data from 10 patients and suddenly they'll be able to solve everybody's problem. So I think there's a potential issue there that we need to really keep an eye on, and make sure that there aren't products being developed that are based on AI that actually really won't stand up in the long run, because they haven't actually sort of had rigorous research and lots of data to drive them.
And I think, to add to that as well, that's when we get into the conversation around ethics and artificial intelligence. And
right.
I think certainly when we're developing our AI solutions, we always talk about a glass box and not a black box.
Yep.
I think if a machine is giving you a recommendation for a patient, it has to be transparent in terms of the evidence that's being used, and the information and the data that's being used. We also need to be careful about one of the great things about AI and machine learning is it's, in theory, it can eliminate human bias that we have when we're in the healthcare system. But there's a chance that bias can actually get translated into the algorithms as they're being developed. So we need to make sure that there's transparency on how this technology is being trained, the data that's being used, and who is actually training the system to provide that information. It's very, very important.
Just coming back for a second to attracting companies to South Australia or the precincts. Within Australia, we have a wonderful environment for accelerating clinical trials, but also R&D tax incentives and things like that. And so, Yvette, how much does that sort of play into the prospectus when we're out talking with companies?
I think it's also by DTI. It's one of the 7 subsectors, clinical trials, and it's a huge opportunity for us here in South Australia. I mean, we have a well-established reputation in Australia-wide, but also in South Australia. We have state-of-the-art infrastructure, and we're highly competitive if you look from a quality, cost, and speed time perspective. The clinical trial, it's a 70 billion industry worldwide. I think Australia only captures 1 billion of that. With our current reputation, I've been talking to several people, so we're looking at optimizing our clinical trial ecosystem, creating a kind of a single point of entries, because for industry, they're keen, they're looking for. I think there's a large portfolio of people, pipeline of people wanting to enter South Australia, but we need to make it a little bit easier for them.
Right.
And I think if we do that, we can, within very short timelines, create a huge new market within clinical trials. And if you look at the opportunities for our patients, we can give them new opportunities for treatments where they don't have the accessibility now or have to travel within Australia, worldwide, to be able to get it.
Yeah. Thank you. We've got a pretty international panel here in terms of backgrounds. And Terry, why did you come to Adelaide?
Mostly because it's a 35-minute drive to some of the best wineries in the world. I actually so I lived here from 2007 to 2011, and that was my first taste of Australia, and then went off and recently left Sydney to move back to Australia, back to Adelaide. And honestly, it had zero to do with work. You know, I do work in Australia. I do some work in Adelaide, but a lot of my work is overseas. It was absolutely for a lifestyle choice. I think Adelaide's a fantastic city. South Australia is an amazing state. Why would you want to live anywhere else? So that was my reason for coming back. What's changed for me from when I left in 2011 to now is all of the things that we're talking about and the people that are here doing things that I didn't see before. So, you know, we've got Troy at the Global Centre for Modern Aging doing some great stuff with keeping us well and healthy when we're getting old. And Michelle at Life Whisperer, you know, all the great things that Raymond's doing as well. You know, that's new. That's new. SAMRI is new. SAMRI 2, you know, the Lot 14, all of these initiatives that are happening here. But you know, playing devil's advocate, as much as I love it, we do have to have a common purpose. And I think we don't want places like Lot 14 just becoming a place where you rent office space. It needs to be more than that. And it is more than that. I'm being unfair on Lot 14, but we need to have a common purpose and a common mission. What are we going to do? So SAMRI 2, we're going to focus on proton radiation therapy, and we're going to be a center of excellence. We're going to get people in, we're going to educate them, we're going to provide first-class treatment to cancer patients. That's wonderful, and I think we need to capture that idea and expand that out and not have this precinct here as disparate, you know, fiefdoms doing different things. I think we need to, and again, that's where I think government can help with providing some of that.
Bring it together.
That cohesion.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're sort of running out of time, so I'll ask for sort of closing remarks in a second, but one of those things for me that is truly exciting, and it links back to investments in infrastructure, it links back to areas of focus. So Lot 14 at one end of the CBD, very much defence, cyber, space, artificial intelligence, machine learning. The other end of town is this incredible footprint of medical research infrastructure across the universities, SAMRI translation into the clinic. The stitching of those two together, the overlap, the adjacencies of technologies that will have relevance to defence and space that will help to inform and improve patient outcomes and care. That's something that I really look forward to fast forwarding to and seeing the outcomes of that into the future. And even from the Hospital Research Foundation's perspective, you know, we need to keep ahead of the trends to the certain things that we're funding as well. Yvette, in a couple of words or a few sentences, can you just sort of give us an idea of things that you're excited about going into the future?
Sorry, can I give an idea about?
Things that you're excited about going into the future, just as closing remarks.
Yes, so the future, if I envision the future, I think it starts with culture and leadership. I think people know culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think we really have to start realizing, you know, that entrepreneurial, that innovative, that risk-taking culture, and also a culture of collaboration, that's key to be successful together with strong leadership, visionary leadership. You know, think big, and we can do it. I think we're positioned to do that, and we should, and strive for the big money, federal, international, get the big partners in, get the federal money flowing into our states. We're positioned to do that, and we just need, you know, I think everybody here in the room to do so.
Great, thank you. Terry?
Yeah, I think big. I like that one. That's really good. Take more of a risk, and I think, again, be a little bit more entrepreneurial, and failure is not a bad thing. Failure can be a very positive, good thing, and we get it wrong 9 times and we get it on the 10th, but when we get it right, boy, do we get it right. So I think having more of that entrepreneurial spirit, and I think that comes with public-private partnerships, absolutely, because I think they're just pieces of the puzzle that we need to put together, particularly in the area that we're all working in as well. And, you know, we're here at AmCham, you know, and I spend 50% of my time living in the US. Americans are great at selling themselves, you know. Like, look how good I am. Look what I'm doing, you know. And I think as Aussies and Brits, you know, we're a little bit more reserved. And, well, I don't want to talk myself up too much because there's a tall poppy syndrome here. You don't get the tall poppy syndrome, and tall poppies are promoted in the US, you know. So I think we need to, and I think, you know, Department of Trade, Tourism and Industry here in SA are starting to do a great job at getting the message out to the world that we're here and we're doing some really good things here. But I think, you know, just back ourselves a little more.
Yeah, it's, I completely agree. You know, having lived in the US for a good chunk of time as well, it's the get the hell out of my way because I'm coming through an American approach, as opposed to the shopping list of reasons why it won't work elsewhere. Yeah. Karen.
Well, I guess my comments would be very much along the same lines. We definitely have all the pieces of the puzzle here. We have huge opportunity provided we collaborate with each other and don't compete. That sometimes is difficult in a small state where perhaps there's less money available, so we all of course start sort of arguing and fighting over it, but actually it's an opportunity then to see how we can collaborate and use that money smarter. From my perspective, I think South Australia should stand up and say that we can, with all those pieces of the puzzle connected together, be the easiest place in the world to navigate as I guess an inventor or an innovator, to navigate the complex ecosystem from ideation right the way through to getting a product out there on the market.
Yep, and we should certainly be seeing more of that. Look, thank you very much. It's been a wonderful conversation up here. I really appreciate it. I think we've got the infrastructure, we've got the raw materials, we've got the research excellence. It's ours to make it happen. So let's make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you.